Welcome back into Sportsmemo's betting podcast. College football, every game on the board. The last segment here with Teddy Covers, our closer. Teddy, welcome into the podcast. How you doing?
Dude, you sounded so smooth with that opener right there. You're like, and our last segment. You're getting real good at this, Drew. You got the intonations down. You sounded, that was awesome. But I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Well, thank you for that. I'm doing good. And, it's nothing, a little YouTube, how to be a podcaster, not to mention, I guess I've been hosting this for over a year now, Teddy. So the voice inflection is an important part of it, of the gig, right?
That's what they say. The voice inflection tells the other person when he's time to talk.
Let's give the people what they want, Teddy. Heading to the Sun Belt, 381, 382, down to the end of the card. That's what this segment will be, guys. The first three segments already up at sportsmemo.com. Check them out. The closer, Teddy Covers, will rip through the end here. We got Sun Belt action. Arkansas State on the road in Atlanta, laying 6.5 or 7. 70 being the total as they go to face the Georgia State Panthers, Teddy.
Yeah, look, I mean, let's talk about what you were talking about before we went on air. In that, you were like, I've seen both these teams play this year, and this number looks about right. And I have the exact same assessment that you do from a general perspective. You're like, all right, we've seen Arkansas State play more than once. I saw them rout the Rebels. They're certainly a team that I have no hesitation backing on the highway. They won and covered last week in that wild shootout at Troy. But now they got to win by margin off a crazy game against Troy. And it's not like we're talking about a Georgia State team that can't play.
Right.
I mean, we've already seen this Georgia State team take some. I mean, whatever. They were good enough to win at Tennessee. And say what you want about Tennessee, they were good enough to win that game. They were also bad enough to lose by an infinite amount at Western Michigan. What was that, 57-10? So the good and the bad from Georgia State is dicey. But at the same time, from a spot standpoint, they're coming off a 3 overtime loss by a field goal off a bye. It feels like a Georgia State type of spot with their opponent coming off a overtime affair. So if I had to play it, I lean dog. But I'm not convinced Georgia State's going to trade points with the Red Wolves.
Yeah, and what Teddy was alluding to is we were trying to get his opinion on this off air before, and really just when you're betting the Sun Belt Conference, Teddy, like you alluded to in terms of Georgia State getting blown out by Western Michigan. Sure, that can happen anytime any bets can go one-sided like that, but especially in the Sun Belt, in the smaller conferences, sometimes that tends to happen, and obviously that could happen here. But Georgia State is not a bottom feeder. They're pretty well coached. They're a tough team. I just don't think it's positive EV long term to be laying a touchdown here with an Arkansas State team that is better. It's just I think this line is about right on the road here. So I guess we are in agreement. We got Conference USA up next. Western Kentucky at Old Dominion. The Monarchs catching 3 at home, 43 the total, Teddy.
Yeah, and of course, this is an Old Dominion team that gave Virginia Tech a battle. They gave Virginia Tech, they led 17-0 at Virginia. They gave both of those teams legitimate scares. They were plus 27 in one and plus 28 in the other. The loss to East Carolina last week, and again, that's a home loss. And sure, you say, all right, the spot wasn't right, and yeah, they turned the ball over. But it also tells us at Old Dominion what we saw against the two in-state, the two step-up-in-class in-state one-way rivalry games may not be the true Monarchs. And I certainly think that this point spread is telling us the betting markets certainly think that. And the point spread last week told us the betting markets thought that. Western Kentucky off a bye week and then a nice upset over UAB last week, although, the markets are kind of crashing on UAB these days. And that was a turnover game. It was all about the positive turnover margin for the Hilltoppers. They've played competitive football on the highway all year. They were able to win at Florida International. They were dogs in that game. And even though they didn't cover at Louisville, that spread was a little bit short given the nature. And it wasn't like they were blown off the field in that contest. It's not a strong opinion here by any stretch of the imagination, but I know that Old Dominion, hey, I cashed that ticket with Virginia against them. I'm not excited necessarily about getting back to the window with the Monarchs in this matchup.
Teddy, heading to the SEC, in a lot of people's eyes, the biggest game of the weekend. College game day will be there in Gainesville, Florida. We got 385, 386, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific kick here on Saturday as the Auburn Tigers visit the Florida Gators, seeing 49 as the total, with the War Eagles laying 2.5 in the Swamp.
Yeah, and of course, you and I are shooting videos now that you are here in Vegas with me, so we get to shoot videos every week. We talked about this game yesterday on one of the videos we shot. Of course, we tweet those out if you follow us on Twitter. You follow at Drew Martin Bets or at me at Teddy_covers. You follow Sportsmemo on Twitter. You follow any of us on Twitter. You should have links to this stuff. But in the video that I did on this game yesterday, I was talking about just purely from the eye test. All right, these aren't teams that we haven't seen before, and you and I are the same in terms of what we do on college football Saturdays. You and I sit there for 14 hours and watch college football and watch games all day and multiple games all day. So we've seen these teams. Mm-hmm. And from an eye test standpoint, Auburn's flat out better than Florida. The Gators have issues on the offensive line. That is real. And now, they're playing with the backup quarterback in Trask. And I know Trask has played okay so far. He played well so far. He's still their backup quarterback behind a bad offensive line, and this is a truly elite defensive front. Auburn's been a moneymaker, man. They're 5-0 against the number. And for a top 10 team that's 5-0 against the number, they haven't gotten a ridiculous amount of hype. Ohio State's gotten the hype, and obviously Clemson and Alabama, and Auburn's still in the, LSU's gotten some hype. Auburn's still in the afterthought category. And it's a Frost QB. Everyone's worried about the Frost QB. The Frost QB, Nix, has played well. He certainly played well in his last try in a hostile environment at Texas A&M. That was a gritty performance from a young QB, and he's not like Florida's QB, the backup. He's the starter. He won the job. I could only take Auburn in this game. I don't know how Florida is going to move the football against that Tigers defense. I think Auburn has potential to be in the defensive backfield play after play. And again, from a betting bandwagon standpoint, look at the SMU bandwagon right now. People that don't know anything about college football. Oh, SMU 5-0 against the spread. Well, so is Auburn, but the bandwagon not nearly as big compared to some of these teams.
And Teddy, I don't disagree with you looking towards Auburn. I mean, I'm not going to be betting Florida by any means. But you bring up Florida struggling to score points. What about this Florida defense? They're not getting a lot of hype. Do you think Auburn can struggle offensively as well? And if so, does that lean you towards the under?
The problem with playing the under in this game is the pace that Auburn is likely to play at. Both these teams could play at pace on Sunday, but I would expect Auburn to be doing a whole lot of no huddle and doing everything they can to wear down that Gators defense. I do respect Florida's defense. I think it's a rock sign. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a relatively low-scoring slugfest, kind of like Auburn or Oregon was in the opener. But my concern here about playing this under is simply the pace of the game. If you got 160, 170 plays, sometimes these unders run out of gas in the fourth quarter.
Well said, Teddy. And we'll go from the SEC down to UMass versus FIU in South Florida here, as the FIU Panthers laying 26.5, 68.5 the total, as the UMass Minutemen head on the road here, Teddy.
So I do the same thing every Sunday night. I make my power rating numbers for every college. I adjust my power. By Sunday night, I've gone through all the box scores and have adjusted my power ratings. And then I said, I don't make the lines for the next week's games. Based on my numbers, and I realize that's just a pure power rating number because I want to see where my number is compared to the market number. And this week is the game where I had the biggest differential between my number and the market number. I was more than 10 points off, and I'm not usually 10 points off on any point spread, especially at this stage of the season. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, your first reaction is, hey, wow, there's a ton of value on the dog. And your second reaction is, why is this spread so damn high? Then you start looking. And you're like, well, like Florida International's no good. They can't be laying. Here's UMass coming off as good a game as they're going to play. And, the point spread was wrong on them last week in the win over Akron. And they won the game, straight up. And the money poured in against them. So I'm like, well, maybe here. And then you start looking at the recent series histories. Florida International scored 63 on this team last year, and they scored 63 on them the year before. All touchdowns, no field goals. There is a team speed differential here that is very real. Even though the talent differential isn't overwhelming, the speed differential is. And, I could only play UMass plus, I'm telling you. In this point spread range, I do not think FIU demerits being a 4-touchdown favorite over anyone. But UMass coming off a win against a team where they're outclassed speed-wise is, even though my power rating says, got to take the dog here. That's not I can look, but I will. I don't expect it to be. I haven't bet it yet, and I don't expect it to be on my card for the clients when that gets released in full tomorrow morning.
He's Teddy Covers. Check him out at sportsmemo.com, hitting 56% year to date, both NCAA and NFL. Also last year, 58%. And guys, you can get his 7-day all access, every play, every sport. Next 7 days, 1 week service here. TC69 is the coupon code. That will take $30 off, only $69, less than $10 a day with Teddy Covers. TC69 at checkout for his 7-day all access. Next up here, we got AAC versus the Sun Belt, Teddy. We got Memphis at UL Monroe. Looks like Monroe catching 14 in the hook, 63 the total.
So last week, I talked myself off an easy right side winner, saying it's just a spot's too bad for SMU. I can't get there with SMU. And SMU went to a South Florida team that couldn't compete, and that game was over by halftime. And I was kicking myself by the end of the first quarter of that game going, spot schmott, it's talent. So we worry about the markets there, worry about the spot. Everyone's worried about the spot here for Memphis. Memphis coming off a big win over Navy, and that was a hard-fought game. Don't be fooled by the final score. Memphis didn't put that the touchdown to win by margin in until the very end of that contest, much to the dismay of Navy bettors and under bettors in that ballgame. And on deck, another AAC showdown against Temple. So off a big game with a big game on deck, and in between, 2-touchdown road chalk against a team that they're, not a rivalry here, not necessarily one that they're stepping up and excited about playing. That concerns me about Memphis this week. And, of course, we know that Monroe is capable. We saw what they did against Florida State, at Florida State, where it wasn't like the defense was getting a ton of stops. That's my biggest concern here for ULM is, Memphis makes a bunch of big plays. They made a couple of big plays last week against Navy. And, that offense has playmakers. ULM's defense is not loaded with quality speed. And Memphis, in theory, a couple times they could hand the ball off, and next thing you know, it's 80-yard touchdown, and that's a problem for the Warhawks to catch up. It's not a game I'm going to play. My first lean was towards the over in this contest. You look at these two offenses, and you say, there's ample reason to think that you could see, touchdowns in bunches from both teams. But spot-wise, I'm a little bit worried about Memphis bringing it this week, and that's probably going to keep me off the over here.
And Teddy, we have seen under money, and I want to bring up a question to you because I've noticed this the last couple times I've bet Memphis, and in that Navy game I was on Memphis, and it's not that I feel lucky. I'm not going to say it's the right or the wrong side in how that one finished. I think it was about lined correctly. But one thing I took away is, yes, their offense is good, but their quarterback Brady White, I don't know that he's that good. His decision making, he holds on to the ball too long. I mean, their offense is explosive. Did you take anything away from the way he played?
Well, I think number one, Navy's defense, and I thought he played better in the second half.
Yeah,
that was a first half, second half game. Navy jumped on him, and then as Memphis woke up and played a much better game after halftime. White is not a QB that I'm going to trust against the better defenses. I remember the Ole Miss game. He wasn't, that wasn't a pretty offensive performance for Memphis in that contest either. But when he takes a step down in defensive class, I think he's more than capable. So I'm not going to call ULM anything but a step down in defensive class compared to what they faced.
That makes sense, and that's a good handicapping angle there, maybe to look on betting Memphis against the lesser defenses, and having them punch up isn't necessarily the profile that you want to be betting on Brady White to kind of light up the scoreboard there for the Memphis offense. Next up, let's head to the Big Ten, Teddy. We got Michigan State, the Spartans at Ohio State Buckeyes here. Buckeyes laying near 3 touchdowns. They are at home. Low total here, Teddy, just 49.
Yeah, so this is one where series history matters to me, okay? 2 years ago it was 48-3. Last year, Michigan State in revenge. Oh, that was the Spartans' last visit to Columbus. Was it just an ugly blowout loss? And they scored 3 points in that game. Last year in East Lansing, that game was a battle, 9-6 into the fourth quarter. But then the same thing happened. Michigan State's offense still didn't work. The defense finally worn down and ends up 9-6 in the fourth, a 26-6 final. That's what I worry about from the Spartans this week. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. All right, we talk about Ohio State and a strength of schedule issue. Florida Atlantic, Cincinnati, Indiana, Miami, Nebraska. They haven't faced a defense yet. Say what you want against Cincy. I guess Cincy's got a pretty good defense. They're not Sparty's defense. And Michigan State has shown that they can slow down Ohio State in a way that other teams can't. They've shown that consistently. All that being said, I can't figure out how the Spartans are going to score. Michigan State's offense has some playmakers. I'm not a Lewerke fan. The offensive line has not been good. The play calling hasn't been, I'm confident in this team. And Sparty, despite on paper having an offense that looks talented enough to move the football in the Big Ten, they haven't done it. And they didn't do it last year. And they didn't do it against Ohio State. So, honestly, from a value standpoint, there's plenty of value on Michigan State here. But if I was going to take the Spartans, it would be a first half play. I worry about that defense wearing down if the offense can't move the football for 4 quarters. And that's happened each of the last 2 years against this Buckeyes defense. And this year's Ohio State defense might be better than the one we've seen in each of the last 2 years. So if it's Sparty here, it'll be Sparty first half, not for the full game.
From Columbus, Ohio, down to the Bayou, we got the Utah State Aggies at LSU here. 27.5 or 28, 4 touchdowns here. The Bayou Bengals laying at home. 73.5 the total, Teddy. You interested in getting involved here?
Well, I mean, total-wise, I might be interested. I mean, look at LSU's last 3 games. I mean, shoot, whatever. They scored 55 in the opener against Georgia Southern, then 45-38 against Texas. They hung 65 in Northwestern State, and then 66 on Vandy. And from all indications, I know they have Florida up next. All right. And that does concern me. Off a bye against a team that they might not be as focused on as they would be. That does concern me here for LSU. But the money's poured in on the Tigers. This team has been a take-no-prisoners team. Joe Burrow's been as good as anybody in the country throwing the football around. And Utah State's defense, they're not going to stop LSU if LSU brings their A game or even their B game. But if LSU's distracted in any way, shape, or form, I mean, we've seen this Aggies team. We saw them give Wake Forest everything they can handle earlier this season. That was week 1 of the opener when Utah State, there were a lot of questions about that squad. This is an offense, with Jordan Love. They could throw the football around. And I think they can throw the football around again against an SEC defense. So my gut reaction here has me looking at the over. And the markets have been pretty high on LSU this week. So there seems to be a wise guy sentiment out there that thinks the Tigers are going to bring their A game here. And if they do, they can score as many as they want to against the Aggies defense.
Teddy, we got UTSA at UTEP up next. Battle of the directional Texas schools here. 45.5 the total, -1.5 or -2. That's UTEP laying in El Paso.
So I do the same. My process is the same every single week, and it's, to me, that's the way that I function best. And what I do, again, I talked about earlier in the pod about the process on Sunday night. By Sunday night, I'm putting all my numbers together, and I don't look at the openers until I do, until I have my numbers ready. But the other thing that I'm going to do Sunday night / Monday morning is go through a good handful of games and saying, nope, I'm not betting this one. I can't see a way. And this is that game. This is a game that I spent literally a minute with. And I'm like, there's no freaking way that I can lay points with either one of these two teams. I don't trust either one of these two teams to ask them to win. When I say, all right, my impressions of the Miners or the Roadrunners since the beginning of the season, they've both been nothing but negatives. So it's an easy game. I'm not going to play it. I will pass on UTEP. UTEP's the Houston Baptist was their win. San Antonio's win came against Incarnate Word. Neither team has been competitive in any way, shape, or form against a Division I foe. And it's only been step up in class, certain for UTEP. I guess, Army and North Texas aren't the same as some of the step up in classes the other way. But at the same time, Army's a good team and North Texas is a good team compared to San Antonio. This is a long way of saying pass, a game that I did not do a ton of research on.
Not a problem, Teddy. And we got one game left, guys. And make sure to check out Teddy's service at sportsmemo.com. 56% year-to-date, 58% last year. Also remember his NFL hitting 58% for the last 5 years. And you can get all of it. College football, NFL, every play in every sport. Remember, we got MLB playoffs as well for only $69 for a week of service with Teddy covers. You like what you're hearing? Try it out at sportsmemo.com. Coupon code TC69 at checkout. 7-day all access, less than $10 a day. Coupon code TC69. Teddy, we got one game left here, and it's the late night action, the degenerate special, so to speak. We do preach money management. Don't chase, and if you've had a good day, don't have to bet the last game. But for the listeners out there that like to have a little action in this late night standalone, Boise State at UNLV, 57.5, 21.5, up to 22.5. That's the Boise State Broncos laying right here in Las Vegas. What advice do you have betting this one?
Well, one of the things that I do in college football, I'm always looking for when all of a sudden, when you're doing your Google News searches, you're checking out the coaches and the teams and your beat writers. I'm always looking for buyout info, Come October, what coach are worried about getting bought out? Bobo in Colorado State. Yeah, there's some issues there. Well, we've got Sanchez in UNLV, who was a contract expired at the end of the year, and it does not look like he will be rehired. And the Rebel program, when you think about it, since I've been here, they've gone with the old tired retread who can bring in the recruits, and John Robinson had a little bit of success and then went downhill there. They brought in the top-notch Division II head coach and Bobby Hawk, and that didn't work. The FCS coach, let's bring in someone that can do that. Oh, no. All right, well, let's bring in the quality assistant from the quality program. They brought in Mike Sanford. Nope, that hasn't worked. All right, let's try the innovative high school coach. Nope. It's been 20 years like that. And I give them credit. I give the Rebel brass, even though it's been several different athletic directors during this span, I give them credit for saying, let's not just dial up the same tired retreads. Let's try something different. But I don't know how to get this program jump-started, man. I know they're going to start playing in Raider Stadium. Maybe that'll do something. But playing in that stadium in front of 15,000 fans isn't going to make anybody happy. It's not going to make the program bring it to a good level. And things are bad for the Rebels right now. The town's down on them, the school's down on them. They've been, last week's loss to Wyoming was pretty ugly, but, the loss at Northwestern, the loss at Arkansas State at home, the quarterback's hurt. It's a Rebels team that the markets aren't excited about. It feels like the era is coming to a close. And Boise, again, the Broncos, at one point, they had the strongest home field edge in all of college football. That was 15 years ago. Now, if you're betting against Boise at home, you're making money. And if you're betting on the Broncos on the road, you've been making money. Boise can probably name the score in this ballgame. I don't know how UNLV is going to put points on the board. But the one thing we have seen this Rebels team do a couple of times, and especially in this point spread range, they get down 3 touchdowns. Sometimes they're live to put a score in late. And that would definitely concern. You're not getting any point spread bargains here with the Boise State Broncos in this spread range, even though UNLV looks very much like a bet against team moving forward.
Teddy, you interested in going to the game at all?
No. I every year I try to go to one UNLV game. Some years I make it, some years I don't. But honestly, like Saturday nights, I'm working. Every once in a while I'll be like, all right, late in the season when I'm not as worried about it, I might get out there. But I talked about getting through all of those box scores and recaps and everything by Sunday night. Right. And that requires me sitting in my office on Saturday night, getting that process started. Because it's, going through all the games and all the box scores and all the recaps and all the info, that's what, 12, 14 hours is at a minimum. that I have to budget that between Saturday and Sunday, and I do watch NFL on Sunday. So I'd love to go to a game with you one time, but it's probably not going to be this week.
All right. I always like to get a little college football in. Usually I have to wait till bowl season as well, so it's not like we get the opportunity in this business to get to many. So here's one. Just wanted to throw it out there for you. Teddy, last question here. What is if you were in control of the UNLV football program, what would you do to kind of spark it? I mean, you got Las Vegas to sell, a lot of pretty girls, a lot of money running around in this town. You're moving into the Raiders Stadium. How would you go about building at least a competitive program in the Mountain West?
I mean, there's no reason to think that UNLV couldn't end up with a program like Boise. It's not inconceivable. And they do have a new stadium next year. I think that is a chance. But the answer, I mean, as I was saying is, I honestly don't know. They've tried a bunch of different things. None of them have worked. I think that what does it take? It takes more money. That's what it takes. It's not just a stadium. You're going to need the practice facility. If you build a $100 million practice facility or $50 million practice facility, you can perhaps get some of the recruits that you haven't been getting. But I mean, UNLV's problem, and it's been this way for 20 years. They can get 5 or 10 guys, 15 guys who might be able to play for a Pac-12 school, but the rest of the roster can't. And it's not about getting a handful of high-level recruits. It's about getting more than a handful of mid-level recruits and maybe avoiding some of the injury problems. But, I mean, that's easy. It's real easy to say on paper. Doing it in practice, it's going to require money. And that's not something that the UNLV athletics department has in spades right now.
All right, good stuff from Teddy Covers. Follow him on Twitter at Teddy_covers. I'm on Twitter at Drew Martin Betts. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Check out Teddy's service at sportsmemo.com. And remember the coupon code TC69 at checkout. Less than $10 a day for a 7-day all access. He hasn't had a losing weekend in college football as of yet this season. 56% year to date, 58% last year, and of course 58% over the last 5 years in the NFL. That's one of the best, if not the best, in the business. Check him out on sportsmemo.com. 7-day all access, $69 using the coupon code TC69 at checkout. We'll be back tomorrow breaking down NFL Every Game on the Board podcast. Best of luck with your bets.